Preparations are underway in Brazil ahead of this year's COP30 climate summit, where global powers will come together for 11 days of climate diplomacy. One notable absence from the conference is the United States, as the Trump administration continues to push trading partners to reject or soften climate commitments. The effects of climate change are being keenly felt in the Pacific, and advocates there are hoping to see strong progress made on climate targets actions in Brazil. ʻAlopi Latukefu is a social justice and climate advocate, and he joins me now from Port Vila in Vanuatu. Good to have you with us this evening. Now, firstly, how significant is this year's COP summit in Brazil? What do you think could realistically be achieved there?
Thanks, Girish. It's wonderful to be here and chatting with you again on this issue. There's a lot at play at the moment with this current COP. Obviously, there's a lot of hope on many sides to advancing the agenda, including on greater climate targets under the NDCs that are being presented this year as part of the meeting. There's a lot of focus on the loss and damage fund and the opportunity that represents to ensuring that countries that are facing the greatest impact from climate change are able to access the sort of support they need to protect themselves and to be in a position to negotiate with countries that are in a better position to support them on this particular area, particularly given the ICJ decision handed down this year that put an emphasis on the importance of taking account for the actions of countries and interests in those countries that have contributed substantially to climate change.
Yes, and do you think there will be? Yeah, do you think then it will be a very different sort of COP summit from the ones we've seen in the past, precisely because of that advisory opinion, as you mentioned, by the International Court of Justice to declare, states do have a legal obligation to tackle climate change?
I think it puts a different focus on the meeting and one that puts more emphasis. However, as with all advisory opinions, they aren't binding. So it is something which requires consensus, position, taking forward agenda in a really a lot of effort to try and build outcomes that will deliver on this year's COP. The difference also this year is that it's been hosted by Brazil with such a heavy emphasis on the Amazon and obviously on nature-based solutions as part of the agenda that they've put on the table as something important for this COP to discuss. Adaptation and resilience is also important, as well as the just transition and climate justice issues that have consistently been part of the COP agenda. In the background, obviously, all of this is the carbon markets and clean energy transition that has been shaping the agenda over a number of years.
Yes, there are these, the targets that are from the Paris climate change agreement. It looks as if the US wants to withdraw once again from that accord. What sort of hope is there, in terms of commitments from the big polluters, because they are the ones who are going to ultimately be the biggest determinants of the extent to which the climate warms on the planet?
The departure of the US under the current Trump administration, while very disappointing, was not unexpected. But that's where there is a great opportunity for others, including China, including India, including Europe, to stand up and demonstrate the importance of not only the commitments to climate action, but also the commitment to the international rules-based order that defines these issues within the context of the global consensus. And that's something which is such an important thing at this time, which can't be lost sight of, despite the departure of the US at this time.
Yes, and does it give you encouragement when you see what is happening in Europe, but also to some extent in China and India that are moving to greener technologies, and here in Australia that there is the federal government that is adopting the net zero policy? Does that give climate advocates like yourself a lot of hope going into this COP summit in Brazil?
Well, I think, the proof is in the pudding, and the demonstration of this important energy transition by countries and the commitments made by countries to their NDCs, which are very much about what level of commitment they're going to give to reducing their emissions over the next period of time. Unfortunately, despite the rhetoric, a lot of countries are putting targets that are nowhere near what's required to achieve the 1.5 limit that was set as the danger point for everyone, not just places like the Pacific. But it is something where the interests at play are there's such pressure on economies, on vested interests that really are all playing out in these conferences.
Now, a lot of world leaders will be heading to Brazil for COP30. One of them who isn't going will be the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. He won't be in attendance. What do you make of that in the context of Australia's bid to host COP31 next year?
I think there's a lot of opportunity to read a lot into that as a signal of some sort. But in fact, I think that probably the decision was made more based on Mr. Albanese's other commitments and priorities at home, given that he's had a long period of travel as part of that. And Minister Bowen obviously will be attending the COP. It's a very important opportunity, should it be announced, but one which doesn't necessarily require the leader of the country to be there to accept, obviously, on behalf of the country, that opportunity. It is a decision made and prioritized, within the ministers responsible for those areas. And I think that's something which I don't think we should read too much into it, but it is still an area that is, a decision that is being contested by Turkey at this time, along with Australia and the Pacific. And should the decision not come to either country, obviously it'll return to Bonn in next year. But fingers crossed, we'll see it in Australia and the Pacific next year in Adelaide. And it's such a great opportunity to show the world exactly the challenges and issues facing our region that are part of the important decisions being made at COP.
And ʻAlopi, just one more question. I mean, if you had the chance to speak to Chris Bowen before he heads up to Brazil, what's the one message you want to send to him that he should bring to Brazil?
I think the message I would say to Minister Bowen is that the Pacific sees his leadership at this time as extremely important, not just for the region, but for the future of the Pacific. It is something where he has a critical role to play in ensuring that not only the agenda is set, but ambition is set for COP to shape the next 10 to 15 years, which will be a critical period of change, either for the worse or for the better. And that means big decisions being made and an ambitious agenda being put on the table. So that would be my message to the minister: be ambitious and be there for the region.
Okay, ʻAlopi, Latukefu, really appreciate your insights and thoughts on the COP summit. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Girish. Nice to talk to you again.